Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, among other things, I would like to talk to you about an event called Bowling for Kidneys. It is going to be held on Sunday, the 11th of August 2019 at Bramble Bay Bowls Club, Woody Point. All proceeds go to the Kidney Support Network. Bring a photo with your favorite Star Wars character. There are lots of prizes to be won. It costs $5 for entry, and there is a barbecue and cash bar available. Go to 4 kidneys at outlook.com and look them up on Facebook at kidneys. One of my friends works at the Kidney Foundation charity shop. They had a gigantic bear there, and now the bear is there no longer. I asked them what happened to the bear, and they would not say. I wasn't full of despair because I can always get another bear from elsewhere, but it won't be the same bear. On the same day that I went to the kidney shop, I met an Aboriginal artist from Arrernte in Northern Territory. His name is Ben Hompton. His people are the Witchetty Grub people. So he called one of his artworks Witchetty Grub Dreaming. All indigenous tribes have their own animal, and every family within that tribe has their own animal. There can even be sub-clans within tribes or subgroups which have their own animal. These animals are traditionally worshipped, but the Bundjalung people are the exception to that rule. They worship the Creator instead of His creation. This is Benjamin's artwork. Obviously, it's the other way around to the way you're seeing it. When you see those circular horseshoe shapes, that means it's people sitting down. Often it takes many hours, many days, possibly even months to create Aboriginal art. A lot of it is done in an exoskeleton-like pattern. Some people may think that Aboriginal art uses dots because it's their style, but in some cases dots were placed over Aboriginal art to stop non-Aboriginal people from understanding the artwork because they wanted to keep their story secret. They wanted to keep them just between the members of their tribes. It's not even considered appropriate to do Aboriginal art if you are Aboriginal yourself. You have to be a member of that tribe in order to get approval, or you have to ask special permission from the members of that tribe. There was a time in history when members of the Democratic Party prevented African Americans from voting. Bill Clinton appointed a woman as Surgeon General, an African American woman who thought that children should be taught to masturbate. When she was asked what she thought about masturbation, he later made a godly choice and got rid of her. God helps us to turn our back on our past. He keeps our past from becoming our future. I'm grateful that Jesus died on the cross for me. Because of him, I've got freedom from hell. Because of him, my life has a purpose. I'm glad I've got a mother and a father who love each other, who don't cheat on each other or beat on each other. I'm glad I've got a mother and father who respect each other, who don't argue all the time and yell at each other. I'm glad I've got a mother and father who don't spend all their money on gambling or drugs or alcohol. I'm glad I've got a mother and father who don't neglect me. They don't spend all their time at work, so they never have time for me. My father went through a time where he studied for Bible college, and he studied at a secular university with a Bachelor of Arts degree. During that time, my mother had to step up and give us and be the one to give us the majority of attention. Sometimes circumstances force us into situations where we're not able to spend as much time with our kids as we'd like to. Some people lie to themselves that they're earning lots of money for their kids when really they're just focused on climbing up the corporate ladder. It's easy to lose sight of your priorities when you're chasing success. Eminem has a song where he talks about writing about his life and his children come up to him and they want to spend time with him, but he's not able to spend time with them because he's busy writing a song to make money for them. He said once that if he could live his life over, he would still do the same amount of drugs, but I think he was just joking because he's recently turned his back on that lifestyle of taking drugs, and you can see the results. He's rapping faster than he's ever rapped before, and he's rapping about topics that are far more significant, like the song he did with Ed Sheeran about killing babies in the womb and feeling regret over it because he paid for his baby to be killed. God helps us to turn our back on our past and to live a different kind of future. He keeps our past from remaining our present and contaminating our present and sticking up our future. He sticks up for us. He fights for us. He causes us to unite underneath his wings. Why would we ever want to take flight from him? Why don't we fight for him when he's fighting for us all the time? When he's always there for us to answer our prayers? Why wouldn't we want to return love back to him when he's done so much for us on that blood-drenched cross? We can say we love somebody, but would we take a bullet for them? Would we take a bullet for a stranger or an enemy? Would we take a bullet for somebody who insults us? Would we take a bullet or go to jail for someone that only sees the worst in us and not the best? Jesus would. His love is amazing. It blows my mind. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's not meant to make sense to me. Someone said about me once that I don't understand redemption. I don't think I was meant to understand it. It's an incomprehensible concept. As humans, we are naturally prone to be selfish instead of selfless. They say having kids or being in a relationship helps you to avoid being selfish. I don't know what that's like because that's not my experience. I've been in a relationship in the past, and that has motivated me to be more selfless, because I had to consider, what does she want to eat? Where does she want to go? Does she want to watch this movie? Even though in the past I forced my will on my exes, I said I wouldn't see any movies with swearing, so they had to go along with me or else they weren't going to watch anything. But we're better off as a result of making that choice. I'm grateful that I didn't get busted by security when I walked out of a store with rubber bands in my pocket, because I was thinking of getting somebody rubber bands, and then I just managed to slip it back without getting busted. I thank God for His grace and mercy. It isn't always easy being honest about the things you've done in the past, because you face the fear that you might get busted or thrown in jail. We have to conquer our fears. You have to be careful who you tell your problems to. We had a circle of trust at one base I was on. I never told anybody else about the sexual struggles that all of us were having in that group, but obviously somebody broke that circle of trust and ratted me out. There was a meeting held between the leaders on the base to decide whether I left or whether I was allowed to stay, and the majority of leaders voted for me to leave. They sent me packing with some free t-shirts. When I was at a mission base that was almost monocultural except for a few Sri Lankans, it was my fondest dream to join a multicultural mission base. But when I found that dream becoming true, it turned out to be different to what I expected. It turned out to be good. I got the opportunity to make friends from other countries and experience the world through their eyes. To me, it was like living in a little Fiji, because there were so many Fijians on the base, and it was common to hear Fijian being spoken. Then it was like I'd go from Little Fiji to Little Samoa, because at that time I was always hanging out with my Samoan friends on the weekend and going to church with them. And there was a time in my life where the only faces I'd see apart from my family members were the members of my Samoan family in Christ. Life has changed for me now. I had to make a choice. I felt like I had to make a choice because of domestic violence related issues. People who are close to me may struggle to forgive me. They may feel like I've thrown them under the bus and turned my back on them, but I still associate with them. I don't blame them for the nightmares that I had about seeing the world through the eyes of my friend's baby, hearing my parents screaming and being terrified out of my brain. We dream all kinds of things. Sometimes the movies we watch and the music we listen to and the books we read influence what we dream about, and other times it's just completely different from real life. Like the guy who dreamt about a penguin writing on his blackboard. I never saw any movie about people being able to fly when they jump on top of garbage bins, yet that's what I dreamt about. I used to dream about Darth Vader showing up at my door and wanting to kill me. I used to dream about burning in hell. Both the erroneous version of what hell is like, where hell is a party, and the real version of what it's like, where it's a place nobody wants to visit because it's a place of unceasing torture. I dreamt I travelled there on an elevator. My ex-pastor dreamt that he went to heaven and nobody who he was related to on earth was related to him in heaven, and everybody's face was green. We are told that we will have new bodies when we get to heaven, so it makes sense that if our bodies are different, our skin will be a different colour, but I guess I'll find out when I get there. He had no reason to lie to me. I met a guy who was involved in drugs and gangs, and he saw the walls of heaven. That's what kept him motivated to live a godly life and do a total 180. One guy heard Christian bikers worshipping God in church, and that music drew him in, and he got brought to his knees and brought to Christ. God has the solution to every problem we might face in life. Don't think there's ever anything that's too petty for him to be concerned about, and don't think that there's ever any difficulty that's too big for him to deal with and fix. He made the universe, he made the sun stand still. He raises the dead to life. Whatever problem you're facing, he's well able to take care of it. It's crazy how some people have to go to prison before they come to Jesus. God sees the situation you're in. He sees the dire straits that you faced in the past or you're facing in the present. Your situation may seem impossible to solve. Though it may seem improbable, God is able to work a miracle in your life. He's done it before and he'll do it again. It's easy to dismiss people and think that God can't use them based on their outside appearance, but God doesn't look at the outward appearance, he looks at the heart. I have to make a correction of sorts because I said that there is no such thing as generational curses today, but although I see that we are under a new covenant period, it's possible that we can still bring curses of sickness upon ourselves. In the Old Testament, we see examples of people bringing curses on themselves and on their children when Eli didn't discipline his kids, and then for multiple generations afterwards, his children died when they were young, until eventually no more kids were born and his seed or his family tree or his branch on his family tree was completely cut off from the world. They vanished just like the Ninevites. His sons were having sex with women in the temple and taking meat that was supposed to be sacrificed to God for themselves. The priest was supposed to have the leftovers after God had been given a sacrifice, but they took the best cuts of meat for themselves first and then gave God the leftovers. They would have ended up eating the meat anyway. They just didn't prioritize and offer it to God first. The offering of meat was done as well as the offering of grains. They were both done for the purpose of redemption of sins. In that day and age, the Jewish people had to continually bring offerings for their sins, but now that's no longer necessary because of the blood of Christ. He's died for all sins, past, present, and future. When Jesus died on the cross, the Jewish people cried out, "Let his blood be on our heads and on the heads of our children." Some use this verse to justify saying that the Jews cursed themselves and because they're the Christ killers that people should kill them, but that isn't true. Only that generation was responsible for their sins, not subsequent generations. The children aren't responsible for the sins of their fathers. We're each responsible for our own sins. It is necessary to make reparations and make things right when things haven't been dealt with, when there's sins that past generations have committed, when our ancestors have committed sins and nothing has been done to make things right between our culture and other cultures, and between our family and other our family and other families, and between us and other individuals. There are some people who have murdered others who have gotten away with it and they've never been brought to justice. There are some who have raped and molested and the court has let them get away with it because there was insufficient evidence. There are situations where there's hearsay and conjecture, there's insufficient proof of somebody committing a crime, so the fairest way is not to press charges, because if charges were pressed, then a guilty man could be sent to death row, as has been done in the past. You can say that DNA testing is foolproof, but that isn't always the case, and lie detectors aren't always foolproof either. They say one way to tell if somebody is guilty or innocent is if they are able to look you in the eye, but in indigenous culture it's thought to be rude if you look an elder in the eye, so you can't necessarily go by that. Police may judge you as guilty if you shake when you're with them, but people get nervous when somebody's staring at them with accusing eyes. They may say that you're guilty if you run away, But it's natural to want to run away when somebody is chasing you. We have a fight or flight response when we feel like we're under threat. We'll either run away or try to lash out. God helps us to walk in peace, to use our brains instead of using our fists. There are some people that you can't reason with, and your best response to them is silence. The lead singer of Tool, James Maynard Keynes, said if it wasn't for music, he would probably end up killing somebody. I'm glad he's got music. He had to deal with the death of his mother. All of us respond to death in different ways. He's a guy who cusses, but I'm not like him. I may feel compelled to say dirty words and to use foul language, but God gives me self-control. He keeps me from exploding like a volcano in that way. I have different kinds of explosions that might be related to anger, and they might be related to fear. And I feel they are in some measure related to lust. I know when I look at certain images, when I watch certain videos, I'm aware of being part of a spiritual battle. I'm aware of something squirming around me, something trying to latch itself onto my body, something trying to control me. I know it's outside myself because I know when I control my emotions. I know when I control my speech. If you watch half a minute on video, it's powerful enough to stay with you forever. You can never remove the images and sounds that are in your mind. All you can do is abandon those mental roads and build new roads in your mind. Those roads that you've abandoned may pop up in your head. When they do, you have to make a conscious effort to jump off them and jump back on the right track straight away. The more you linger on those roads, the more you are exposed to danger. This danger may disguise itself as innocence, but it's the total opposite. It results in the corruption of your soul the more you linger on that road. God helps us to make wise decisions instead of foolish ones. He helps us to choose our friends wisely. Bad company corrupts good morals. Bad company has the potential to corrupt good character. It seems contradictory that the Word of God says this, and it also tells us to be a light in the darkness. It tells us to be in the world, not of the world. We are to go out into all the world and preach the gospel to every living creature. We are to be influencers, not influenced. We are to be revolutionaries, not reactionaries. We are innovators. We are renovators. We are children of our Creator and our Savior. Unless Jesus lives in your heart, He's not your Savior, He's just your Creator. He's not your Father, He's just your Maker. For all of us who believe in Jesus, who choose to make Him Lord of our lives in every passing moment, He is Father, He is groom, He is friend. For all of us, He is lawyer and judge. He pleads on our behalf before Himself. He is capable of changing His mind, but not His character and personality. If He had found 10 decent people in Sodom and Gomorrah, He would have left the city alive, just like He spared Nineveh before they decided to turn away again. You can see why Jonah was reluctant to go to Nineveh, because they were oppressing his people. God tells us to show love even to those that are making our lives miserable. God wants us to choose love over hate and peace over war. The only war we should choose to fight in is the war against powers and principalities, the war against the devil's army that God is fighting all the time. If we're fighting on His team, then we're fighting on the winning team. We don't have to be afraid about what happens in the future or what's happening in the present, because we know that God is in charge of the universe. It's under His control. Presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens and emperors and shahs and emirs change, but He is always in authority. All of those people only get their authority from Him anyway. Governor generals change. CEOs and company directors change, but He never changes. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He will never contradict His own word. He will never tell something to a prophet that contradicts what He's already said in the Old Testament and the New Testament. The only thing that changed between the Old Testament and the New Testament was our need to make sacrifices in the form of killing sheep and goats and offering up vegetables to God and fruit to God. What didn't change was God's view on morality. What didn't change was our need for God in the ever-passing moment. Some say that Jesus Christ isn't present in the Old Testament, but they're just not reading the Bible properly. Anytime it talks about the angel of the Lord, that's Jesus Christ in pre-incarnate form. An incarnation is the form somebody takes. When Jesus was on earth, when He came out of Mary's womb, He was God made flesh. He was God in human form. Now He has returned to His original form. He lives in everybody who believes in him. He gives us the right to call ourselves his children, to be partakers of his inheritance. The sacrifice he asks of all of us is to choose selflessness over selfishness in every passing moment, to choose to do what pleases him over pleasing ourselves until it becomes second nature to us, until our spirit nature supersedes the desires, until our spirit nature supersedes the desires of our flesh nature. Our old sinful self is likened to a dead man by Paul. The dead in Christ will rise, but we don't want the dead man to rise up in us. We want his or her nature to be gone forever. Every time we make decisions, every time we make choices, there's a tug of war that takes place inside us. The devil tries to guide us to make wrong choices, and God attempts to guide us to make right choices. We know that God is more powerful than the devil, so God inevitably wins that struggle most times when it happens. That's why we don't see as much evil occurring in the world. Most people choose to obey God rather than disobey him. We don't make morally upright choices in and of ourselves. We make them by being guided by God. We make them by connecting with the choice that he would intend for us to choose. We always have an option to obey or disobey. Those who obey bring blessings into their lives, and those who disobey cause curses to latch onto them, and they open up gateways in their spirit for devils to enter and influence them. You can see the influence of God and the devil in what people say and in what they do. There are people who are in transition. There are people who have just chosen to follow Christ, so they're still learning to change the way they speak, and learning to change the way they think, and learning to change the people they hang around and the places they go, and learning to change the way that they dress. It's not a sin for a woman to dress provocatively, but it's easy for a guy to become tempted if she chooses to dress this way, just as it's easy for a woman to be seduced if a man wears muscle shirts or he likes to show off his body. It's not a sin to be naked, but it is a sin to use your body to cause somebody to stumble. Some people do this unintentionally, and others make a living out of it. I wouldn't say it's a sin to wear muscle shirts. Not every guy does it to inspire lust. I'm happy to have people think ill of me because I choose to think this way, but I don't see any scriptures that prove that I should feel guilty for wearing a singlet. It's crazy how some people call them wife beaters, like they're making light of domestic abuse or domestic violence. It's crazy that a woman had a fish and chip shop called the Battered Housewife, and she got condemned by advocates who wanted to prevent domestic violence. They threatened to kill her. It's crazy how people who dedicate their lives to eradicating the world of domestic violence end up turning on those who should be on the same team as them, who they should be supporting, not hating on. Even our state government hated on this lady. They had a campaign which said, trust your instincts. We shouldn't always trust our instincts because our instinct is to rebel against God, but He helps to change our nature and transform it, so we choose to please Him instead of remaining diseased. Sin is a sickness and Jesus is the only cure. The more we choose to love Him, the better off we are, the more joy and peace we feel inside ourselves. Some talk about just trying Jesus like you're buying a bottle of milk. Like, just try Jesus, you got everything to gain and nothing to lose. But you got everything to lose if it turns out you're wrong about Him being God and thinking that He's not God and that He's not right when He says that unless you believe in Him you won't go to heaven. We shouldn't approach salvation casually. We shouldn't just see Jesus as our boyfriend or our best friend or our girlfriend. We should see Him as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We should approach Him with caution, with reverence. It's kind of hard to explain the difference between fearing and revering. In a way, we need to have fear and not have it at the same time. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. God's word also says that His perfect love casts out all fear. I believe when the Bible talks about perfect love casting out all fear, it means that we shouldn't let the intimidation of the enemy stop us from serving God and telling people about Him. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be conscious of the fact that God can remove us from this planet in the blink of an eye. Paul was encouraging Timothy in 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 that God has not given us a spirit of fear but a spirit of power, of love and a sound mind. Some translators render this as a sound, disciplined mind. If you believe in Jesus, then you have the Holy Spirit's power residing within you. You have the ability to turn the other cheek. One translation uses timidity instead of fear. We are not meant to be slaves to fear, we are meant to be slaves to righteousness. Some people don't like the term slave, but it's important to use that term because even though we have a choice to choose right or choose wrong, we should live as if we have no choice but to obey God, because to make the choice of not obeying God would result in eternal punishment. So we should act as if that choice doesn't even exist. We're not robots. But we need to change the way we are, so our automatic response to God is always no and not yes. It's always yes and not no. We should always say no to the world and yes to Him. Even if it costs us our jobs, even if it costs us our friends, even if it costs us our lives, even if we get locked in jail. I have a persistent fear of abandonment. I was only left to my own devices once when I was arguing with my sister about washing up, and I kept on rejecting what she was washing up and saying it wasn't good enough. And so, to teach me a lesson, my folks left me at home while they went out because she was crying and bawling her eyes out. I still don't think it was just what they did, but I built a bridge and I got over it. Forgiveness isn't necessarily forgetting, it's remembering things differently. When we forgive, we should be able to talk about the past in a way that shows we're not troubled by it. Our past isn't our present. It does shape who we are in the present, but it doesn't have to shape who we are in the future, except to give us reasons to rejoice and be grateful to God that we're not the same person that we used to be. Honestly, if I had the choice to live my life differently and do things differently to the way I did them in the past, I most likely may have done them exactly the same, but I'd like to think that I would make the right choices instead of the wrong choices. I'm not perfect and I'm continually making mistakes, but God is continually in the process of perfecting me and making me into a brand new being. It's not easy to choose love over hate and peace over war. It's not easy to walk the straight and narrow road, but there's a greater blessing in walking the straight and narrow road than walking the broad road that leads to destruction. There's a peace and joy that never ceases. Jesus Christ satisfies my soul. My goal is to please Him above all else. Even when tears are streaming down my cheeks from loneliness, I've got company because I've got Him. Even when I'm frustrated and vexed about my situation, even when I think I'm going nowhere fast, even when guilt and condemnation is heaped on me, even when critics surround me, I've got You, providing all of my needs. I've got You, so anything else would be great. Yet You give me more than just salvation. You help me in my trials and tribulations. You give me clothes, You give me a house, You give me the freedom to worship You. That may not always be the case in this country, but as long as it persists, I will take advantage of the opportunity. It's weird how some people perceive those of us who believe as dangerous, as abusive, when all we're trying to do is just give all the glory back to our Creator. The reason we were created is to worship you. If we don't worship you, then we're not living our true purpose. You are the one who validates my existence. Your insistence on proving to the world that you are God was proven when you rose from the dead. You proved that you weren't just wasting your time. You are the author of every rhyme that is intended for your glorification. You counteract the devastation of the enemy. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my cup with oil. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. You overthrow the influence of the world. Use me as your implements. I'm always under your influence. Your love is so intense. Let my life be a sweet smelling incense to your nostrils. I wake up with this struggle still present in me. You help me to turn my back on the way that I used to be. Keep it from owning me, keep it from controlling me, keep me from becoming a clone of the enemy. You atone for my sins, you help me win. You're more addictive than gin. You help me greet everybody with a happy grin. Wondering where do I begin? I see I don't have to be a slave to sin. You're so amazing, you make my head spin. My homie was always telling me that I should use a less redundant rhyme to rhyme with the word that I chose. You always hold me close. She dressed me up in a shirt and a cap so I would look more like a rapper, but I felt it was equally dapper to dress in threads that immediately give away the fact that I'm a lover of hip-hop than if I just wore a completely different outfit entirely, like Aha Gazelle. If you see a dude running around in a trench coat, you wouldn't immediately assume that he's a rapper. Or if he wore ninja gear, you helped me persist through my tears. You were the one who engineered me, helped me to be sincere, even when I wanna be fake, when I wanna brag and talk about how amazing my life is and how much money I've got in the bank. I don't have to stress about where my next meal is coming from. Thanking you for keeping me alive and breathing. Even though I'm not married with children, I'm married to you for life. And I've got spiritual children in the form of people that I influence. Use me as your implement. I see you were instrumental in changing my life. You were essential, you were part of my life. I can never find peace outside of you. Help me to think out of the box. You outfox the enemy. You came from the school of hard knocks. You were a carpenter. You are stirring my spirit, whirring in my spirit. Even when my eyes are blurring from teardrops, I see that preferring you over the world results in my freedom. Your love defies reason. Forgive me for my treason. In every season of my soul, you are the one who restores me and makes me whole. My only goal is to please you. You give me a whole new lease on life. I just aim to put a smile on your face. One lady is gonna be seeing me for the first time. I love the way you give us the ability to rhyme or express ourselves verbally. We may think that life would be beautiful if we lived without constraints and restraints, but the truth is, unless we've got that holy muzzle on our lives. We would lead to more trouble. We would find ourselves being led to more trouble. You know what grinds my gears, you know what bursts my bubble. I'm so grateful for your wisdom guiding me each step of the way. Yahweh, I see that you don't play when it comes to our need for salvation in every single moment. Lord God, I'm grateful for your atonement so I can be at one with you, Father, Spirit, and Son, Trinity. Live in me. I see that you are always there for me. Yes, you are. You are faithful and true. You are ever merciful and gracious to me, even though I don't deserve it. God's riches at Christ's expense. Your love is so intense. I'm not sitting on the fence. I've done that for far too long. 3 decades strong. I don't want to be that way anymore. I don't want to be that hypocrite anymore. I don't want to be turning back to the way that I used to be anymore. I don't want to be constantly returning to my vomit like a dog. I don't want to be turning back, turning away from you. I don't want to be a hypocrite. Lord God, help me to be consistent. Help me to go the distance. You were there with me, helping my soul to be fireproof like a garment that's flame retardant. I see my need for you is constant in every single moment. Thank you, Lord, for your atonement. You can use kids from all kinds of backgrounds. They don't have to be completely functional in the way that some members of society determine it. I see that you are the one who causes your truth to germinate in me. It's crazy when the doctors don't believe in the spiritual world. They think we are crazy. We should be locked away with the key thrown down the toilet. But I live with no regrets, and I wish that they had the sensibility to see the spiritual world, because the spiritual world influences the physical world. The two intersect, the two connect with each other. They are interacting with each other all the time. When I bust around, I do it for the sake of you. You're faithful and true. Every day your mercies are brand new. My strength is renewed. Thanks to you, I got hope for the future. I can cope with whatever life throws at me. You gave me the rope, pulled me out the well of despair. You were always there. I don't have to take the electric chair. I don't have to get an injection that is lethal, that results in my death. There was a company that chose not to make that serum anymore. I don't need a truth serum in order to make me tell the truth. I will do it willingly. My need for you is constant in the ever-passing moment. I see that you made the world for the sake of your glory. Let my life be a sweet smelling fragrance to your nostrils. I know you know more than any scientist, any doctor, any historian. You are the grandest of physicians. You don't charge any money in order to heal us. All you want is our willingness to obey you, to not stray from your will, resulting in the betterment of our souls. I lament for the world, for the way it is today, for all the people that are perishing without knowing you. Help me to keep on cherishing you, no matter what I'm facing, no matter what kind of persecution comes my way. You are the solution to every single problem. You give my sins absolution. Help me not to be a victim of the institution. This is my resolution, to live differently in the present moment to the way that I lived in the past. Your love will forever last. I'm always having a blast. You are the one who fills my glass of blessings to overflowing. Give me the strength to keep on going. Even when it's snowing, I can get outdoors and praise you. Even when there's an avalanche threatening to cover me with snow. Even when my house is destroyed by a whirlwind, I will keep on trusting in you. Even if I'm dealing with a flood-drenched area like the people in New Orleans, I will be keen to praise you on this hip-hop scene. You help me avoid being obscene. You are the one who is always watching over us everywhere we go. I know that you are in command of my mind, my body, and my soul. You are the one who consoles. You are the one who silences the voice of the enemy. You scream louder than his whispers. It gives me the shivers to think how amazing you are, how incredibly gracious you are to die on the cross for my sake. One who once only knew you as a stranger and an enemy. One who was so addicted to his offenses that he got defensive when you started to question the rightness of his way of looking at the world. But you helped him choose a better way to be. You helped him to be a better MC. He benefited from calling it quits with that old way of being. Now I'm seeing the world from a different perspective, a less effective one, because I've got your hand of protection over my life everywhere I go now. In my section, in my jurisdiction, I will avoid being a contradiction. In my frame of reference, I give deference to you. Your authority is flowing out to me. Your power is flowing out to me in every single hour. You keep me from being devoured by the enemy, from being devoured by mosquitoes. I see I was made for the sake of giving you praise. Ancient of days, Yahweh, forever and always. I will be grateful for the blood that flowed down your face, those tears that trickled from your eyes, those corpuscles that burst and flowed down your cheeks. All my days and weeks I have because of you. My mouth don't have to be alive no more. You helped me win this war against the enemy. You are the one that I'm fighting for. I'm delighting in you, Lord. Peace out.